Get in unobserved.
Right. And what was 2?
Collect visual evidence.
Right. 3?
Get out unobserved.
And 4?
Blow this whole f***ing game wide open. Take the bastard under and go down in history as the 2 people with enough balls to save this country from genetically engineered devastation.
No, Grant. 4 was have a meeting about what to do next.
Okay, retro go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies and specifically talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, aka TV's Travis. This is episode number 298. And our movie this week is the 2006 horror comedy Black Sheep. And here to talk with me about it, she had not seen it before, from the Horse Girls podcast, it's Jenna. Jenna, how are you?
I'm super good. How are you doing?
I am doing quite well. All right, so we'll dive right into this. What, if any, history or knowledge did you have of the movie Black Sheep prior to deciding this what you wanted to come on this show and talk about?
Legitimately nothing.
Had you ever been told about this movie and maybe conflated it with the 1996 Chris Farley David Spade film Black Sheep, which a lot of people do?
So luckily, no. I had never heard of this movie before until one of my co-hosts was like, well, this is the movie that you're going to be watching with Travis.
That's right.
And she described it like she said that this was a movie that they watched a lot in college.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the Chris Farley movie would not have been that movie.
Fair enough. Okay, so you knew nothing about this movie going into it. You were told by your co-host, hey, this is what you're going to go watch. Were you at all prepared for what you got? And how long into the movie did it take you before you figured out, oh, this is what I'm in for?
Just a little bit prepared because I knew that it was going to be wacky horror instead of just like straight, actually scary horror.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just the kind of films that she's into.
Fair.
So it didn't take me long, but I don't think that I was entirely prepared for exactly how zany things were going to get.
Right. I'd imagine that. So I first saw this movie. In fact, the only other time I saw this movie was in 2007, I believe it was 7 or 8. The film was making the festival circuit at the time, and we had a local film festival here, and I was working as a stage manager. And every year for the festival, there would be at least 2 midnight screenings, and they would have some kind of horror movies. And the year that this one, they had this movie, and they had The Host, which is a Korean monster movie. Mm-hmm. Those were the 2 midnight movies. I was in for both of them. Loved them both. Had no idea at the time that Weta Workshop and Weta Digital worked on both of those movies. But I was, ever since, I would say... Well, it first started with The Frighteners, but when the Lord of the Rings films came out, I fell in love with Peter Jackson and all of that kind of stuff. So I started diving into just New Zealand film because it was Peter Jackson, and I loved those movies. And then I was like, oh, a comedy zombie sheep movie thing from New Zealand? Sure, I'm in. And that doesn't really begin to describe what we get here at all. So overall, now that you've seen it, what do you think?
I loved it. I can't wait to watch it again. It was so stupid, and I adored every second. The squeal that came out of my body when I saw Weta Workshop, I was just like, this gonna actually be good.
Right. And I think what happens there is that takes this movie from like, because this is every low budget monster creature horror movie kind of thing, right? It's zombieverse. Mm-hmm. It's even things like Sharknado and whatnot are this same ilk where it's like somebody has a funny idea and they make it into a movie. In this case, it was Joseph or Jonathan King. I'll have to look and make sure I get his name right. But he was the writer and director for this. This was his first feature film. He had been working in like commercials and stuff in New Zealand for a while, but had this idea that he wanted to make a movie and was inspired by things like The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, American Werewolf in London, and those early Peter Jackson movies. Have you ever seen any of Peter Jackson's early stuff like Bad Taste or Brain Dead?
I don't think I have.
Okay. So if you liked this, you'll like those. It's that same
Heck
type
yeah.
of thing. In fact, Brain Dead, which was known as Dead Alive when it came to the States, I just covered on this show a few weeks back. And it is that same kind of way over the top, cartoonishly gory splatter movie. And it's absolutely worth a watch. Like the whole plot of
Okay,
that
yeah, I've
movie.
seen Dead Alive.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
so you can see that influence in this completely. And then but what takes it beyond the level of just cheap silly horror movie is then getting Weta Workshop involved and doing everything practical. There's one CGI shot in the movie, which is when the giant flock of sheep are coming over the hill.
Hmm.
You can clearly see they use some CGI there, but that's
Yeah.
basically it. Everything else was practical effects in camera, which does benefit them in terms of like really short post production because they don't have to do a ton of digital work for it, but also it gives it a certain kind of feel when you do everything practically, that I think on these low budget things I feel like works better because there's
Hmm.
something for the actors to play off of, because the acting is always going to be I don't want to say subpar, but it's going to be a little bit less in a movie like this because it's oftentimes a lot of very inexperienced actors in something like this. So I
Hmm.
think that adds to the schlock, the and that kind of ups the enjoyment for me, at least, in a movie like this when everything's also practical. It's buckets of fake blood going everywhere and really over the top. Did you have, by the way, on your bingo card going into this movie, did you have sheep biting off a man ween?
No, I certainly didn't. No, I was shocked and surprised.
That one definitely surprised me that first time watching it. I wasn't as surprised by the number of we'll go with animal husbandry jokes.
Yeah, you're
You
gonna
sort
get
of
that.
you can see those coming from a mile away, and they're good though. They're well,
Oh yeah.
they're funny in this because like some of them are very overt, and then there's others that are subtle at first. I think my favorite one being when they go into Angus's study, like when they open up the door and he's just standing there with his shirt back to the camera, smoking a cigarette, and you immediately know what happened. You
Hmm.
you already know without them having to say a single thing, and it's just like that kind of stuff really cracks me up. Um, so the other thing this movie does that I really like is it doesn't try to get too cute with its plot. You know, because
Yeah.
that can happen a lot. You get a little too ambitious, right? You want to do too much and try to have like this really intense or intricate plot, and this is like, no, it's just crazy zombie sheep. The sheep are pissed, and it's New Zealand. There's more sheep than people. Um, because I think I want to say it's something like 40 million sheep and 4 million people at the time, something like that.
Something like that, I think.
So, was there anything in this that did surprise you with how much you maybe liked or disliked it? Was there anything that kind of you weren't prepared for, and you're like, "Wow, that was really good," or "Oh man, I could have done without that."
There's nothing that I could have done without. I really enjoyed every bit of this movie. What really surprised me was the incorporation of like the people transforming into these sheep beast,
Hmm.
these caprasapiens or whatever. Uh, I don't know why that surprised me of all of the things that happened in this movie, but I was just like, oh yeah, the sheep are gonna go nuts and this is gonna be great. Nope, people turning into sheep right now.
Yeah. Yep. That was like so you have three layers of it basically, because you've got like the genetically altered sheep lamb zombie baby, which infects other sheep,
I need him.
right?
I need him.
Maybe with a little less goop. I could probably go without the
Nah, goop and
slime.
all.
Oh, you want the goop and all? All right. Yep.
Yeah. I want him like
Um,
climbing out of a little slime container.
but you have like one of the things was, how do you make sheep look menacing, right? Because they're sheep. They just look dumb all the time. And they did a great job on the practical sheep that they had of just making
Mhm.
them look like rabid dogs, and like just putting, fake blood on their muzzles. And that was it. And that alone was enough to make them look really creepy.
Mhm.
But yeah, then I loved adding in like the Weresheep, is kind of what I refer to them as, because the first time I wasn't ready for that. I remember, like, you get some indication of it with the hippie Grant that gets bit,
Mhm.
but then nothing. It's sort of like he just starts turning into almost like a zombie-like creature at first. It's not until they take, it's Tucker, who's my favorite. I love Tucker. When he takes his boot off and his foot is a hoof, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. Um, and it just go, and the reaction from it is perfect, because he's just like, I'll get a tetanus shot. It'll be fine.
He is just like that wholesome farm dude too, though.
Yep.
Well, maybe not so wholesome, but
Yeah. That was another,
is every guy you work with on a farm?
yes. Yes, he is. Um, but it managed to have like a couple of plot elements that were, again, it was a simple plot, but I loved the inclusion of like the hippie and activists that are trying to like
Mhm.
take down the big industrial farm. Um, and just how ridiculous and over the top they were. Like, but they didn't just make them idiotic. The scientists were kind of dumb. The farmer, Angus, was really dumb. Like, everybody is this over the top caricature, so nobody's great in this movie, which works. Everybody's getting made fun of.
Yeah, they are,
So
but even the dumb characters, they gave them these, like, shockingly intelligent aspects. Like, Experience would say something really stupid at some points, and then she would say something grounded and insightful, and you're like, "Ugh, what is this character?
right,
Why do I like her?"
yeah. Which, by the way, great name, Experience.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's set up for a singular joke, but it was still pretty funny. Experience and Grant, and they're just the two of them. That's the other great part. And that clip I played right at the beginning there is indicative of like their whole thing, where he's overzealous and wants to do everything, and she's like, no, no, no. What was number 4? Having a meeting to discuss what happened, not running in and grabbing whatever was there. Which, that scene killed me, because it's broad daylight, they're hiding, and he runs up. And there's the scientist and 2 like assistants, and they're taking the whatever genetically like perfect sheep, I think, to put it on the truck. And those 2 guys must have been bodybuilders or power
Oh
lifters,
my
because they
gosh.
just
Yeah.
picked up that whole metal crate with a sheep inside it like it's nothing. Um, but that's going on in broad daylight, and he runs up and nobody sees him until he's like halfway back up the hill. But he can't pick up the cooler with the 3 canisters in it. That's too heavy for him. So he's got to open it up to take one. And they still don't notice him. Like, he's trying to drag that thing away, and it cracked me up. But as soon as he pulled one canister out of that, you kind of had to know, like, oh, that's getting broken. Something, whatever's in that is
Mhm.
coming out. And so, yeah. And that's when we get our little lamb zombie. It was adorable. And immediately started, but, and I love it's obviously a puppet, and it's a great puppet, and I love puppets like that. Absolutely love it. Like, where you can tell it's somebody's hand inside of it moving things around.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, it just kind of goes from there. Like, it's just and just when you think the movie kind of reaches a point where it can't really go further, it does push past that.
It does.
I, for one, hate with a fiery passion the idea of an awful pit,
Yeah.
because that's just horrid. And then to have 2 of your characters fall into that is, but Experience had the perfect reaction to it, which I may or may not have captured to play later. Because,
Nice.
yes, lamb chop. I definitely got lamb chop vibes from the lamb zombie. Um, yeah, it's fun. Like, and it doesn't take itself seriously. at any point
Mm.
either, which you have to do in a movie like this. You have to have fun with this silly premise and just really go for it. Even down to like when Henry shows up. Well, so I think before we get to that, we should kind of talk a little bit about the plot of this movie and sort of what happens, because the opening of it, I have a tendency to ramble. I'm sorry. But the opening of it we get is they're out. It's just the dad and his two sons, or his son and farmhand or whatever, out rounding up the sheep. And one of them gets away, but the son comes home. And meanwhile, what is it? The other one? Angus is at the house and just takes an axe to the sheep that's in the yard for no reason. Which was, I was like, why you kill the sheep, man? What did it do to
Because
you?
he's a little psycho.
Yeah, apparently. Because not only did he kill the sheep, he skinned it and then wore its skin waiting for his brother to come home. To traumatize his little brother, which was terrible. That was an awful scene. Hated. I mean, I hated that for Henry. But then we cut to whatever it was, 15 years later.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, before it ends though. So here's Angus traumatizing his brother in the barn, scaring him scaring him to death. And then Mrs. Mack comes in and just tells them to stop whatever they're doing like it's normal. And oh, by the way, your father has died. There was an accident. And then we cut 15 years. Mrs. Mack was my second favorite character in this movie. She was brilliant. Every movie like this needs a Mrs. Mack.
Mm-hmm.
And she was spot on. But 15 years later, Henry's coming back to the farm. Now he is deathly afraid of sheep, which is a great introduction and not the right place to live if you don't like sheep. Maybe move off the island. Just a thought. So let's see. Remind me now. He's coming home and that's where I was getting to. He comes home and he tells the taxi driver to wait.
Yeah.
And the taxi driver's like, whatever, dude, it's your money. And then proceeds to wait throughout all of the events of this movie. That I think was my favorite gag paid off. Because a lot of times you'll get something like that in a movie and then you just forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that they came back to him a couple of times. To that taxi
first
driver.
moment when they come back to him, and I was like, wait a minute, isn't that the guy from that taxi? Why is he still? Oh my God.
Because at one point, he doesn't mention anything for a while. And then Henry even says like, hey, I've got a taxi waiting. And then later on, Angus comes up and the taxi driver's just asleep in the cab with the meter running. And then he's just getting food out of the tent, off the buffet. It was great. I loved everything about that. But yeah, Angus is doing experiments on sheep, and he's about to unveil a new sheep. And, but those damn dirty hippies, those activists, right? They're gonna come blow the lid off of whatever's going on. They're there to gather evidence, but Grant is a little too zealous. And it turns out they've got zombie sheep, which honestly is not a phrase I ever thought I'd hear before this movie. Was zombie sheep. But here we are with zombie sheep, and then hilarity ensues, basically. There's so many just funny moments of goofiness that you would think shouldn't work. Like her trying to get him out of. So I'm trying to think of some of those types of moments. So like when they're leaving that house and there's all the sheep outside. So they see the fire, right? Because they lose they hadn't lost the truck yet. They still have the truck.
Mm-hmm.
But they see the fire.
Yeah, the caretaker's house, Michael.
Yeah, they go to his house. He was cooking canned spaghetti and wieners. By the way, that looked pretty terrible, if I'm honest. Yet I'd still eat it.
I was about to say, I'd eat it.
So they go to the house to look for him because we saw him get attacked or heard him get attacked earlier. But when they're leaving that, and her talking him through it, right? Like, you're a tree. All of this that shouldn't somehow, for whatever reason, that that scene worked for me perfectly. And I think too that's kind of a little bit of a callback to The Birds. There was a few different sort of classic horror movie homage moments in this, but I just love that you're a tree, you're calm, and and it's working, and she can't even believe it. She's like, really, um, which was the best part of that. Like again, it's well written jokes because you could have that work in terms of like what she's telling him, but then to add in her sort of incredulity at the fact that, oh, this is actually working is pretty funny. There's that moment. There's well, when they fall in the pit, which is I just imagine
So
how
gross.
bad that had to smell.
Yeah.
Like in reality, not even just the idea of an awful pit, which is a real thing, just to have like a pit or a trench where you throw stuff in.
Hmm.
But even the on-set version of that had to smell terrible.
Well, I would imagine that it's things like latex parts and stuff like that covered in whatever they would use for fake blood during this shoot.
Probably.
And I don't know if you've smelled latex that has sat damp
Mhm.
for a while,
I
or
have.
like or any sort of foam that's just sat damp. Yeah, I'm with you. It's not the best.
No, thankfully that was a set that they built, like because the farmhouse was a real farmhouse.
Hmm.
A lot of the location stuff was, but the caves and the awful pit were a set that they built.
Yeah.
And for me, as terrible as that pit was, and it was bad, and I would never, ever, 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 ever want to be in that situation. Having to then crawl through that cave later on, arguably worse.
Nope, I'm here for it.
Really? Oh no.
Yeah.
I'm not claustrophobic, but her getting stuck at the end of it is what would do me in. Like the idea of getting stuck and now I can't go backwards. No,
Hmm.
I could not.
Yeah. At this place in Tennessee, there's Raccoon Mountain Caverns, and there is this. You can go through one way, and you don't have to go through this certain crawl, and that's fine. You can basically stand up the whole time. But if you go the other way, if you are a weird sadist like me, you go through what is called the birth canal.
Okay.
And you have to go with one arm up, one arm down, and you cannot go backwards. You have to keep going.
Oh no, I'm pretty sure I would have some sort of a panic attack trying to do that. Even if it was this set where I know it's all foam and I could get broken out of it, I just think my brain would cease functioning at that point. My higher functions would definitely go. But it makes for a good tense scene, and they did a
Mhm,
good job with creating that tension there when it's just a puppet that's attacking him.
mhm,
So I did enjoy that. The use of dark in that scene was good. I think the only times there was a couple of moments in this that really felt low budget, and that was the stuff in like the shearing barn where it would get very handheld shaky cam.
mhm.
That was the only thing. They didn't do too much of it, thankfully. It was just for a brief couple of chasey moments in there, and it wasn't even the whole time they were in there.
Mhm.
But that was the only point where I was like, oh, okay, could we maybe not shake the camera around? But you got to hide your puppets a little bit, and so I was fine with that. The were sheep though, that was a full
Mhm.
body puppet. Like that was straight up guy in a suit with
Yeah.
puppeteers working the face. That was amazing. It looks so good. Um,
Heck yeah.
I know I was reading about when they made this, Richard Taylor of Weta was originally like really involved and then got kind of pulled off of it at the time to work on, I think it was going to be Halo, was the project that he got moved to. So he was still overseeing things, but he wasn't as involved, but he was all about doing this. And the whole Weta workshop was loving the idea of doing this. So they definitely went all for it. And
You can
man,
tell that they loved it.
I
The
can't imagine.
complexity of some of the facial expressions of these
Oh
sheep
yeah.
puppets.
Oh yeah. Plus, they did a
You don't do that
full,
unless you love it.
yeah, and they did a full on like American Werewolf in London transition scene too,
Yeah.
which was really good. Like it
Yeah.
just looked it looked fantastic. All of it did. Like, um, and then by the time we get to the brothers, Angus's sort of demonstration, or not demonstration, but his like press conference thing, um, then we just go full on like, all right, it's time to go absolutely crazy with the gore effects, like just entrails getting ripped out everywhere, and it's full, full brain dead, dead alive style, with a
Mm-hmm.
director cameo. The director was the guy fumbling with the keys to get in the car that
Oh,
then gets grabbed,
nice.
and you get Wilhelm scream before they were completely
Mm-hmm.
overused. Um, Also, I will never, ever, ever not laugh when they would do a sheep tackle. When
Oh
somebody
my
would be,
God, every time.
it killed me every single time. Just to have sheep come flying from off camera and tackle somebody out of frame.
Was the girl on the cell phone in between the two trees. That one was the best one to me.
Yes. Well, because there was movement in the background first, right? On that one.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get the whole like look one way and get tacked from the other side type of thing. And it was just because that to me feels like your kind of early Sam Raimi stuff, and
Yeah.
mixed with a little bit of like Muppet style humor too.
Mm-hmm.
And so it 100% worked for me. I'm trying to think of uh, anything. What were some of your favorite moments in this?
Let's see. The little lamb puppet, when you see it pulling itself up the hill by its front legs and you just see the umbilical cord trailing down the hill behind it.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big favorite.
I
The
did like
first
that.
Yeah. The first bite of one of the sheep where it just kind of nips the nose, and at first you don't see anything, so you're like, "Okay, that didn't happen. Nothing.
Right.
It's fine. This is fine."
Yes. And I love too that that's the sheep they run into in the road. And
Oh, yeah.
you've got Henry, who's deathly afraid of sheep at this point in his life because of what Angus did to him, and Tucker just like giving him a ration, being like, "Come on, farm boy, show me what you got." And they get out, and he's like looking at the sheep, like, "What's wrong with you?" And then they're gonna just then you cut away, and Experience comes walking up, and he's like got the sheep under its front legs and like dragging it towards the fence. It was
Mhm.
real good. Um, Yeah, there's a lot of really good ones. Like I said, Mrs. Mac is great. Making haggis at one point, uh,
Mhm.
which I loved Grant as the hippie, right? And then he gets bitten, and that first bite of him, where the lamb is hanging off of his ear, and
Any
he's
any
got a
skin stretch or skin pull was
mm-hmm,
just
it's
ugh.
yeah, I know it makes it gives you the shivers, for sure. But he does that, and then as he's starting to transition, so he grabs the rabbit, and of course you've got the whole like, I don't want to do it, but I got to eat the rabbit thing, and then the joke paid off later with that. Um,
Mhm.
Really got me because every time Experience would start talking, not related or related to whatever was going on, I don't. That's just her dialogue was perfect, like as that really over the top hippie activist character. Um,
Mhm.
and so I captured a bunch of audio we're going to be playing, because it's too good not to. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, you even had like again, Mrs. Mack making a joke about when she comes up to Henry in the house, got me. You don't want nostrils in the back of your head. But then later on, her shotgun's in the pantry, but there's no shells in it. Like
Mhm.
little silly things like that. There's so many good fun moments in this, and I think that's the biggest thing with this movie and with movies like this is it's fun and it's light-hearted, right? It's not mean-spirited, and there aren't a bunch of like. There's definitely a ton of jokes, but
Mhm.
to me, it never feels like it's punching down at anyone.
Right.
Everyone is up for getting made fun of, but it's always like, I don't know, just good natured making fun of. It's like roasting.
Mhm.
Um, so I do like that. I'm trying to think of a favorite. Did you have so you mentioned the lamb crawling up the hill, and like nipping at the one guy. What else? What else kind of stuck out to you?
Let's see. Uh, you know what? I'm gonna steal two limes on here. When Tucker is teaching Experience how to use the gun, telling her that the safety's on, and like trying to direct her
Mm-hmm.
to how to turn the safety off, and he just ends up taking it from her and turning the safety off and pretends to hand it back. And he's like, you gotcha.
Tucker in general, just everything with him, which is why it's a bummer that he misses out on so much of the movie being in the lab, because he was cracking me up. That moment, like I said earlier, the moment where his foot is revealed was great. Even his the joke I may have again captured about getting with the sheep was really funny, because that one was one that came out of nowhere. Like the first joke with the sheep was Angus, where he's practicing his speech and he's naming the different breeds of sheep, because I forgot about that one, where he's like, these are, names that are echoed in the hills and shearing, and young men say them as they're taking themselves off at night. And I was like, whoa, what?
Wait a minute. What?
Hold on. And then you cut to the two guys sitting there and they give each other a look at, is he going to say that in front of people? Okay. Which does perfectly set up the joke later with him. So I guess that works. Yeah, there's some good ones. I captured some money. I got to play some of this. This is too good not to. So first off, I've got Experience and Grant. They ride up. They're climbing the fence to go in, and they have this exchange, and I just loved, because he's so earnest in his response here.
This isn't going to be like the salmon farmers at Grant.
Hey, those fish died free.
I want to
so
know.
PETA.
It is, but I also want to know that whole story. What happened?
I know.
It's great. I'm so interested in that. And so there's that. And then later, after he grabs the canister and they run, and they're running into the woods and hiding, and before they have their exchange of like what were the steps to what we were doing, I did like this.
They'll never catch us. The meat eaters.
Don't let them catch us. They're meat eaters. That's the thing he's worried about. It was very, very good. Mrs. Mack, again, with the shotgun. Now, you've got Henry's in the house, and he's just kind of looking around at stuff, and I think he's in the study at the time, and looking at a picture of his dad and him and his brother, and then just gets shotgun to the back of the head. And
unless you fancy nostrils in the back of your head, I'd not be moving if I were you.
I love that accent. I'm sorry. I just love the Kiwi accent so much.
It's so good.
It really, really is. And then when she sees it's Henry, I love.
Oh, don't worry. I haven't shot anyone since Christmas.
She's genuine with that, and his laugh, that nervous laughter. I capture laughs. Laughs to me are always great, and just like, oh, I believe you that you shot someone at Christmas. I want to know. I don't want to know why you shot someone at Christmas. And then we kind of forget about her for a little while before I think she comes back when Angus comes into the house, because she sends Henry off with Tucker to like go up the hill for whatever reason, and Henry just, again, doesn't care about his taxi at all. He's like, yeah, sure. All right, I'll go, do whatever. So then after they meet up with Experience, which that whole sequence is great, because again, the people here are just completely unobservant. She walked up to the truck in broad daylight and took the gun from the rack in the truck while they were both standing there looking at the sheep. Okay. And they have the whole, I'm with you. I love the moment where he's explaining where the safety is to her. But after that, they go to take a ride in the truck. Right. And she, first of all, she wants to know what happened to Grant. Right.
If you fascists have hurt him, I will organise the biggest sit-in this farm has ever seen.
That is her big threat.
Yeah.
Organize the biggest sit-in. And so Tucker's got to throw that right back at her, right? Has to. So a few minutes later,
Can we give you a ride somewhere?
Maybe to the car so I can,
Organise your sit-in.
yes, definitely organize that sit-in, bud. And even like the way, there was another one where she tells Tucker, I captured all of this. This is a lot. This is a little bit longer one, but she says so much here. And I want to know if I kind of followed it all, but I'm curious if you did as well.
I would have thought that you, of all people, would appreciate efforts to deconstruct the colonialist, paternalistic agrarian hierarchy that disenfranchises the Tanga Te Whenua and erodes the natural resources of Aotearoa.
I love the right at the end. Like she definitely, she should have taken a deeper breath before she started that line.
Yeah.
That got me too, because I'm a big fan of a movie from the 90s called PCU. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I have not.
It's a real funny comedy set around Port Chester University, or its alternative name of Politically Correct University. But that would fit right in with that movie. And then, and Tucker just doesn't care because he immediately goes to,
Learn all that at university, did you? Before you dropped out.
I didn't drop out, thank you. I just missed exams while we were occupying a poultry farm.
occupying a poultry farm. All right. So, yeah, she was great. She really, really was. Because when they go to the house, right? Because Tucker sees the fire. He's like, fire. And so they head for the house. And they go inside, and there's blood all over that kitchen and stuff on fire. And we get...
Oh my god.
What?
The feng shui in this room is terrible.
That is my favorite line, I think, of the whole movie.
Oh, I've known people like that. I really have.
Yeah.
Also, it is kind of telling of the era of this movie with a feng shui reference. So that got me. When she runs into Grant later, when they realize that Grant is the Weresheep, because he's got his little satchel. That's how they notice it. And she asks him, or no, before that. So, sorry. Before that, when they're leaving, they go to leave the room with the sheep, the house. And I liked this exchange. I mentioned it earlier, but I captured it.
Can you feel it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? This is working? Okay.
What's so funny about that is that, like, it is a grounding exercise. Like,
Mhm.
that is something that you're supposed to do when you have an anxiety attack.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I just love that she's like, she can't believe it's actually working. When they run into Grant then, and I just like this.
Have you been eating meat, Grant? Was it even organic?
Was it even organic? Oh, it's perfect. No notes. That's clever writing. I'm sorry. That is really good. Oh man. Let's see. Oh, so then as they go to leave there, and that's when they get attacked by the sheep in the truck. Right?
Yeah.
And he's fighting the sheep in the truck as he's trying to drive. Yeah, you look like you have something you want to say about that.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that it's the most perfectly choreographed fight scene in a vehicle that I've ever seen, bar none. And yes, I have seen Deadpool Wolverine.
It's really good. You get the genuine feeling like he is literally fighting off a sheep in that. But then for it to go from that to all three of them are in the back of the truck and the sheep is driving.
Yes.
That is the cherry on top. And he
Mhm.
realizes they're coming up to the cliff. So he's like, jump. They have to jump out. And then the truck goes down. And I appreciate, probably budget reasons, but I appreciate the truck not exploding when it got to the bottom of the hill, just sort of stopping.
Yeah.
But now they're stuck
Yeah.
there. And Experience looks over the edge and sees it and just says,
I wouldn't want to fall off there.
This is where my father fell to his death.
Oh,
Oh,
Oh.
oh, just immediately stuck her foot right in her mouth. It was great.
Yep. So they didn't do the explosion, but they did have the sheep fur Sherpa covered balloon full of blood that exploded on the door when it
Yes,
impacted at the bottom, and that was so good.
that was a very, very nice touch. It really, really was. I think she had given them her name by this point, but I did capture that just because it was a fun exchange.
I'm Henry. This is Tucker. What's your name?
experience.
Has been so far.
Oh, Tucker. And then I think it's in the house too, when Henry starts to have his freak out because the sheep are outside. Is it in the house or maybe back at the farmhouse? But either way, he's starting to freak out and she asks him what's wrong. And he names the fear, which it didn't capture well, whatever the phobia is, but
Just a completely unfounded and irrational fear that one day this is going to happen.
oh, his therapist has so much material to work with now. Also, as if Angus, as his older brother, wasn't bad enough, he's also terrible about him going to therapy. Like, come on, man. Really? Be nicer. Be better. I also love this phrase. And this is right after he shoots the sheep through the door. So Tucker, the first part of this will be the gunshot. But I just love this as an exclamation.
Bugger me.
Bugger me. It's good. All right. And then he has to shoot it a second time, which is even better. I knew I'm sure you probably figured this out, but did you realize or did you make the connection that the Golden Shears Award was going to come back in some way?
Oh, of course, that was Chekhov's gun. Absolutely.
The Golden Shears.
Best shearer in the country. 3 years running.
Only in New Zealand do you have an award for the best shearer in the country. I think I remember when I first saw this, I thought she said county, which I was like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Watching it this time, I realized she said country, and that's so much better. So much better that it's a countrywide, like New Zealand-wide Golden Shears Award is perfect. This one was right at the end of the movie, but it was too funny not to capture because, again, Mrs. Mack being the best comes up to them as they're wrapping everything up with her plate of food, says, "Who's hungry? I've got mountain oysters." And Experience, being really dumb, is like, "Oh, I eat a bit of seafood," and starts to chew on one.
You know you're eating sheep's balls, don't you?
You're eating sheep's balls. Ugh.
Oh my God.
Oof. Okay. Sorry, but you take your shoe off and your foot is now a sheep's hoof. I think your reaction would be a little bit more than,
I'll get a tetanus shot when we get back. Clear right up. The sheep did that.
I'll get a tetanus shot when I get back. And I did like, but the sheep did that, and his response to that was, then I'll talk to the vet. So, okay. We didn't get a ton with mad scientist lady and her little assistant there, but they were great. His ears were fantastic. That man had the biggest ears I have ever seen. I could not stop. Every time he was on screen, I couldn't stop looking at him. And he has one line in the movie. One. And all he says is,
"That looks anomalous."
It's great. I want that job. I want to be that guy and have a role where I just get to say one weird thing. And it does look anomalous. And then he dies off screen and we see him being chewed on by sheep. He did get a really good gore, like just guts falling out moment. So got to give it.
And I will be saying that like for the rest of my life when something looks weird. That looks anomalous.
with the question mark, anomalous? And the mad scientist lady, I can't remember her name, but she's just like all about every movie with a monster in it has to have the one scientist that is like fascinated by the monster and wants to learn more. You always have to have it. I remember in Alien Resurrection, there was the one doctor that was played by Brad Dourif that was like fascinated by the aliens. There's always the one. Everybody making sheep noises in this too, by the way.
Meh.
Those always got me. Angus is just terrible. He's just a bad guy. But I love a good multilingual welcome. Like some of my favorites, because it's a fun trope, right? In The World's End with Simon Pegg, when he sits down on the couch and he's like, "Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome." They also did that in No Escape, but this one was pretty good too.
Konnichiwa. Guten Tag. Yora. G'day.
It's real good. It's real good.
Yep.
So after Angus gets bitten by Grant, and later on his hand is changing into a hoof. When Henry comes at him in the house, so first of all, he's gotten with his sheep. We know this, and now Henry with a gun pointed at him, and they have the exchange.
You become one of them.
A hippie.
Somehow you had to know that line was coming, but it's still so funny. That's what he's worried about becoming. Not a weresheep. He's not the fact that his hand is turning into a hoof. No, he doesn't want to become a hippie.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And like, hey, I'm not condoning anything at all, but somehow they did find the most perfect, fluffy, just beautiful sheep on the face of the planet. Like that is what, if you think about a perfect sheep, that's it.
Yeah, and that was funny to read about because they did like scour the countryside for that sheep and they found it. And then they had to like continuously brush it and like powder it to keep the wool white. But they did, and it looked amazing. So then you get Henry comes in, and I keep this show PG-13. We're going to use our one F-bomb here because he's got to say this to him.
I understand you got a pretty fucked up idea of animal husbandry.
Yeah.
Which then leads to this exchange, which I think was even funnier.
You Well, it's more of a sperm sample, really.
You wanker.
And Angus is just fine with that idea of mixing his DNA with the sheep. Like, that's his thing, which is why his death is so perfect. And well earned and deserved and gross. Because again, I did not have sheep chomping on. And they really hung on that too for longer than I remembered. You definitely know what's happening. Yikes. It's a lot. But yeah, I love these types of movies. Would you say, would this be you? Because you mentioned earlier that you looking forward to watching it again. Would this be in that like upper echelon of these like cheesy schlocky monster movies?
Oh, definitely.
And what would work? Now there was talk of in an IMDb, it shows it as in production or pre-production of a sequel to this. So
No way.
what would you want to see in a sequel to this? Because I feel like it's such a well done, self-contained little story. I don't know where I would go next. But what would you want to see in a sequel?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I almost feel like you have to do a different animal, a different, completely ridiculous animal.
Yeah, but then you kind of lose the black sheep part of it too. So it's almost like maybe because they do a little sequel bait right at the end with the dog, but that's just silly. I am, however, super glad that nothing happened to that dog
Oh
throughout the
yeah.
movie, including at one point Tucker telling the dog to take off, and the dog's just like, "Peace, I'm out."
Yep.
That was a smart dogs. Cattle dogs are smart dogs.
They sure are.
And I liked when the dog comes back, they use that to contain the Weresheep Grant with the cattle dog. That was funny. Would you watch a sequel to this, or would you rather?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm of two minds because I like kind of self-contained little bottle movies like this.
Mhm.
But at the same time, if it's the same crew and they're going to have fun with it again, I think all new actors would be
Yeah.
one thing. I don't think you bring any characters back because there's nothing else for these characters to do.
Unless you have Tucker sweep in at the end again.
He's got to have no. I guess he's cured, so he wouldn't have one hoof anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I think even if I were to watch the sequel and not enjoy it, then I do still have this little contained one movie. I can just be like, well, that doesn't exist in my brain.
That's true. That's true. I think it's fun to do these. Take an idea, Weresheep, and then flesh it into something. And they were, again, they didn't try to go too far with the concept of it. They were just like, no, it's just zombie Weresheep. That's it. We're going to keep it here, have it take place over the course of, this takes place basically over 24 hours, which I think was also smart. And don't get too complex with it. Because this was the director said that the idea for this came to him pretty much fully formed. Like, he had this idea and then he just worked on it for a couple of years, like refining it down to a nice tight story with a small number of characters. And I think that's why sequels always worry me, because the idea is you always have to go bigger and more. And that's the thing to not do, is keep it small. Because once you take a monster movie and you go beyond like a very small setting for it, I think it's tough to do if you're not Godzilla. If it's not a kaiju type of deal, going large scale just makes it a lot harder, in my opinion. Some of my favorite monster movies are small. Like The Host is one. It's just in that one town in Korea. And the movie's more centered on the family than the monster itself. But like keeping it that scale makes that movie more compelling. And I think that's one of the things with Black Sheep that works for me, is the fact that it just centers around a small number of characters. So you actually get to know and care about them. So I think what you do is you do more with some sort of scientist, maybe finds out about the research and tries to do more with it.
That would be good.
And that's where you get some more of these sheep going on. Or you could also tell the story of like them experimenting on the sheep in the first place. But I don't think you do any kind of prequel thing. I think you let this movie have taken place and then go after that. But I'd be curious. I think it'd be fun, as long as it's got to have the same tone and feel to it. It's got to be having fun, because that's what makes this work, is the silliness. It's an absolutely ridiculous premise, so go full on silly with it, and that's the way to do it, and make it that kind of same idea of sort of the cheap splatter movies. Because that's the other part of this that works, is it I don't know. It's hard. It looks cheap, but also well made. So, like the camera work and the lighting is good, and the puppet work is good, but that also gives it that cheaper charm, kind of look to it. And I think that's where you have to kind of go, because that's the other worry I'd have, is they go too digital with it.
Yeah.
Because that.
Yeah, just limiting yourself to that one shot of the sheep coming over the hill, I think that's what made it so good, keeping so many practical effects.
Yeah, because it does limit when you're shooting, but it also helps your post-production. And I just think that there's a more tangible nature to something when you're doing schlock like this.
Yeah.
Because
and like comedy is difficult. Comedy is really, really hard, like from an acting perspective. And it is so much easier to bring a performance to something that is already emoting at you
Mhm.
than it is to bring a performance to a green screened ball on a stick.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it, right? Because like when you have a lot of digital effects, you don't normally see that in a comedy. It's action and or drama, like David Fincher does a lot. Um,
Hmm.
but comedy is so much about the reactions of your actors playing off of each other and off of the thing. And if you don't have something in front of you to work off of, it's hard to riff. I
Hmm.
think is the other part of it. So, no, I definitely would keep it practical and buckets, just buckets of the fake blood. Just
Oh yeah.
keep it coming. Because even a simple shot like the director cameo where he just gets pulled off screen and you just get the splash of blood, like that alone, that's effective, and you can work those in with also up the number of sheep tackles. Give me more sheep tackles because
Oh,
those are just toss sheep around. Speaking of tossing, when the dog jumps out of the truck, they definitely somebody just tossed that dog in frame.
I
It
know,
was,
yeah, you could see just the way that his little body was curled up. He's like, I've been thrown.
yep. Um, but definitely up the sheep tackles because anytime you can just toss puppet sheep around is going to make me laugh. I love that. When I saw the sheep coming over the hill, I said, Helm sheep. Okay, Stigma, you win tonight. That's good. Oh, it's just movies like this are fun. And I think I read some reviews from users on IMDb just because I'm always curious what people think of a movie. Um, and a lot of the negative reviews on this were people saying it wasn't scary, it wasn't funny. I get like first of all, I get the scary thing, right? Because it's not trying to be a horror comedy, isn't trying to be scary.
Right.
Humor is subjective, so I understand that. But you can't if you go into a movie and you read the blurb on it of being zombie, the sheep are upset, genetically altered sheep are attacking people. You better go in with some like low expectations in terms of the humor is going to be fairly lowbrow. But as long as it's not punching down, I'm fine with that. I don't mind lowbrow
Hmm.
humor. I like highbrow humor too. I like thinking humor, but I also just love dumb jokes about, sheep, like just dumb sheep jokes make me laugh,
Hmm.
or dumb hippie jokes. You're eating meat, but it was even organic. Just gets me. It gets me. And you want this sometimes. Movies should occasionally give you escapism. And I think that's what
Hmm.
a movie like this can do. That's what Brain Dead did, or Evil Dead, especially Evil Dead 2. It's
Yes.
it's that escapism and that slapstick silliness that as long as you don't mind the gore effects, then I think it's something that can be just really, really enjoyable. You have to like that. I know
Yeah.
for some people that can be a bit much. I get it. It's definitely, this isn't the type of movie you watch while eating, breakfast per se, especially with the awful pit. Oh, that was a clip I did not play. Didn't I capture that? She has a response to the awful pit. Um, Let me find that because I know. Here we go. This was the perfect response.
Are you okay?
I'll never be okay ever again.
I will never be okay ever again. Also, I think with a movie like this, lower the expectations on what you think the performances are going to be in terms of acting. And I say that with, again, you're usually less experienced actors and you're shooting in a quick turnaround. Because I think they were fine. I didn't think anybody was bad in this per se. Like everyone was enjoyable. Because that's the
Yeah.
thing, right? Are they having fun? Can you tell they're having fun? And
That is my
I could
number
tell.
one thing for any sort of comedy film at all. If you can tell the actors are having fun, I'm probably going to have a good time with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that comes through. That comes through in performances. You can tell when people want to be there and don't want to be there, or aren't
Hmm.
aren't gelling with their cast, their castmates. And here it seemed like everybody was just in on the joke and enjoying themselves. So it totally worked for me. I'm really glad you got to watch this. This was a good choice for you. And this was fun for me to revisit because I hadn't seen it in so long and I forgot how much fun this movie was. Just how crazy this movie went too. Like it goes hard. It didn't need to, but it goes hard. So this was a great choice. I'm glad that you enjoyed it too.
Yeah, me too.
Now you are part of the Horse Girls podcast, and I had your co-host Tim on a few weeks ago. But for people that don't remember, or just to tell them anyway, what's that show about, and where can they find you and anything you're working on?
Horse Girls is a completely academic podcast where we teach Tim how to become a horse girl through young adult literature and other types of media. So if you had a favorite horse book or horse movie as a kid, those are the things we're going through in order to teach Tim how to become a horse girl. We did also put him on a horse twice now, and he stayed on both times. So I think he's
Hey.
getting it.
That's awesome.
Yep. It's fantastic. And if you want to check out anything else that I'm also on Dungeons and Dracon Beams, Surprise Attack Book Club. I am the quest master for Guild of Granddaughters. And we right now are doing a Song of Sugar and Snow on Dungeons and Dracon Beams. So if you check out that feed, it is our Advent Calendar Christmas project where we release one episode every day leading up to Christmas.
Holy crap. It is nice to meet somebody who is doing as many podcast projects as I am, if not more. So my hat is off to you on that. An episode a day until Christmas.
An
I'm
episode
impressed.
a day.
I'm impressed and also kind of frightened. So good work. Good work on that. But those all sound like great projects. Definitely check those out. Thank you so much for coming on this week. We'll do this again. We'll find another movie. What I think maybe what you could do when you come back is maybe bring me a horse movie, because there's probably a few of those.
Oh,
I
can
haven't
do
seen.
that. Yeah.
I've seen some, but there's plenty that I haven't. So definitely do that. And if you like this show and you want to catch it live as it is recorded, you can do that on Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern time at either Twitch or YouTube, twitch.tv/tvstravis or youtube.com/@tvstravis. You'll find the live link there. If you follow me on any social medias, which I am TV Travis on all of them, there's links every Sunday for that. Typically Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can watch this live, and then it comes out as a podcast on Wednesdays on YouTube and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Dropping a follow on YouTube helps the channel grow, which I'm trying to do even more of this year. And you can also check out at patreon.com/WYHS is the Patreon for this show and kind of all of my projects, but mostly this is the main one. And it lets me do things like live episodes on locations, which I did last year at Dragon Con, which is where I met Jenna and Tim. And that was a ton of fun. So if you want to help that happen more, Patreon is the way to do that. Outside of Dragon Con, do you go to any other festivals or conventions?
Not currently. Dragon Con's the big one that we all do together, and we're kind of looking for some other small things to do. We're going to go to MagFest, but a couple of us are just hanging out while others of us are working.
Got it. And then are you on any of the social media networks?
Yeah, I'm everywhere. You can find me, Jenna Chill, on everything.
Jenna Chill. Well, give a follow to Jenna Chill and check out the Horse Girls podcast. 1L. Jenna Chill with 1L. It's important. Don't use that second L. You don't need it. Awesome. Well, Jenna, thank you so much. This was fun. I hope that you had a good time, and we'll definitely have you come back.
Heck yeah, I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, next week, I've got Nisbet coming back, and we're going to watch I want to say it's a World War II movie. He's got me doing these historical ones, and he wanted to watch The Final Countdown from 1980. So we're going to do that next week, going in a very different direction from our Schlockfest of this week, which will be fun. And then in a couple of weeks, I have your co-host, Alex, is coming on to watch Big. Alex has not seen Big, and we're going to do that. That's going to be super fun. I have not watched that movie in a few years either. So I can't wait. I want to see how that holds up for somebody this far off or this far along. So that's kind of what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. The final countdown and big with Nisbet and Alex. So definitely come back and check that out. But until then, remember to enjoy your movies. And Jenna, thank you for being here. And just remember, everybody, be excellent to each other. This has been Wait You Haven't Seen.
Don't wait for me. I'm not leaving you behind.
What about the sheep? Well, fuck the sheep. Right over there, bro. Go, go, go.
Oh.